If someone came into the studio and they weren't switched on, and they weren't walking into the studio ready to give everything they had to give, I'd look at them and I'd call them a cunt.
It was definitely head first dive into the world of rock and roll.
Me and Johnny snob.
Razorlight's probably the most neurotic group in the universe.
Golden Touch came through me. I have a tape recording of me writing it, and it's chilling every time I listen to it because I can hear the song come out, and just after I've written the song, my mobile phone rings on the recording, and I always wonder what would have happened to my life if that mobile phone had rung 20 seconds earlier and maybe never would have written that song.
He kind of looked like he was in some sort of country version of The Clash. He had a cowboy hat on and he had ripped denim. And we did about a year and a half of putting on gigs with the Libertines and trying to get them signed and trying to get them recorded. And Johnny would be the support act, so I got to know him and got to watch him play.
I suddenly thought it's time to form a band. So I put an advert out in the enemy.
It was basically one ad that was tailor-made for me. And it just said, guitar player wanted, no pentatonics, Stooges, Lenny Cavell, Underground.
Carl became part of the band because the band started rehearsing, but started to realise we needed to do a lot of rehearsing, and there was no bass player. So Björn had a friend who didn't play bass, so he was obviously perfect for it.
And it was sort of really smooth and natural. It all sort of fitted really well when we started playing.
So going to the last section of the track.
Can I see what it looks like?
Christian was like a brother to me. We'd known each other a long time. We had a bond. We'd grown up in the same kind of way. The second time I ever did heroin, I did it with Christian. Mutual best friends died in a car crash. Lee Citron, who was just this wonderful, wonderful guy who I still miss today. I loved Christian's drumming. I fought him every step of the way because every time he'd bring out some mad idea, like playing jungle, he's playing jazz fusion in the middle of a verse, and at times it was genius.
Well, Christian's just a character. He carries himself with a great deal of swagger, which is amazing. It's funny and cosmic and interesting and intellectual and lots of things that you don't normally get with a drummer. Lammas Road was in a horrible factory complex way out in East London, in a place where you would only go to bury bodies. But it was cheap. So that was where the band did all of their early work to become a good live band.
I opened this package, which had this CD in it, and it had Razorlight written on it, had a listen to it and was completely blown away. It seemed to combine the power pop punch of the Strokes, but with a knowing understanding of bands like Television and the work of Patti Smith. And it really struck me straight away that I had to play that on the radio that night.
Here comes Slade, nothing to say. Here comes down and don't care anyway. See the light.
It was a little bit of a dance stunt. It was a Sony label, interested for a while, a couple of indies. The thing that clinched it with Mercury was an A&R called Richard O'Donovan, who's still around now, and phoned me up one day, and he'd heard the early recordings and was just really exciting. It was that human thing where you just know somebody gets it, hears it, and realizes it's just brilliant. We signed to Mercury at a really good time.
So the first learning curve you get when you move into the world of signing a record deal and taking a band into the world of trying to make records and make music is you have this sudden learning curve where you have to try and figure out how you can get that feeling and that sound that you love, that your band loves, that kids at your shows, kids that are the same age as you, but the 50 people in that room in Canada that they love, and how to translate that actually into a record. And you have literally no idea. You just don't know because you've never made a record before.
What I do remember is that we spent £40,000 in the studio, which no one had quite explained to me because it was the managing director. And so he was just ordering equipment and keeping the sessions going. So we managed to blow £40,000 before having finished recording pretty much anything, actually one track.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was okay. But it has to be great. It has to get that feeling of greatness that you feel when you're playing the show. Amazingly, Richard had my back on it and spoke to Steve. We moved on, and Steve was very gracious about it. He said to me, I wasn't the right person. But yeah, there we were. Suddenly we had no producer. We were like massively in debt for the record company already.
It was a real surprise. Talk about sticking your neck out. It would really was for Johnny to do that at that time, because Steve Lillywhite at the time, I believe, was the managing director of the label. And I was amazed that the label allowed Johnny to do what he was going to do.
We start looking for a new producer, and a lot of the names that were coming up were these super famous rock producers, like based in LA and stuff like that. And I was really excited, to talk to these people, like you want to talk to Steve Albini. And this was before Skype or Zoom or anything. So I remember taking these phone calls in this squat that I was living in. And it was like this kind of blind date vetting. We ended up going in with John Cornfield. Now, John Cornfield had made the second, third and fourth Supergrass album. And I remember being a huge fan of how those records sounded.
Richard Donovan came in to see me, and I've done quite a lot of work with him over the years. And he says, I've got this fucking band I want you to have a look at. I want you to record them. And there was me, old JC from down in fucking Cornwall, local yokel, just following my nose.
John took me to the first meeting with Razorlight when he was trying to get the gig. I'm not even going to big myself up too much, but John took me to that meeting, and me and Johnny hit it off. Musically, we had a lot in common as well. And also I could talk like a musical language because I was coming from more of a musical element.
I left the studio, Sphere Studios in Battersea, and I was finally so relieved, because when I heard what was coming back through the desk and that we were in the right room to capture the sound of the band that I knew was there. Anyway, I came back in on the third day. Or on my way in, someone called me up and said that the studio had been hit by lightning and they'd lost some of the hard drive backups. And I'd put down this song called To the Sea, which was a really important song for me emotionally. And it got lost. I thought, well, I'll just go in and do it again. But then when I got there, they said, John's not here because he's had some family stuff, so he's had to go back to Cornwall. So what do you want to do? I just said, well, okay, let's just plow through. And me and Natty just kind of recorded for the rest of the day or the next couple of days. But yeah, it was this really frustrating moment because we'd finally found the right team, and then suddenly the right team was taken away. This was in like February or something, and the album had to be out by June. There was no way that John could be up in London recording because he had to be near his family in Cornwall, and there was no way on earth that Razorlight were going to go all the way to Cornwall and be in a residential studio, because I think at that point us being in the same room for more than about an hour was just impossible. We were really in a difficult spot. I realized I had absolutely no option, but we had to go to Cornwall. I remember thinking, it'll be cool, I'll bring my girlfriend with me. But she turned around and she was like, dude, I've got a job. That was when I made that decision where I was like, I'd been clean off heroin for about 4 years, and I was like, I'm going to take heroin with me to the session as my kind of security blanket.
Well, I didn't remember Johnny saying to me that he was going to take heroin for 2 weeks, because I must have buried it within the huge file of traumatic things that have happened over the years. What I do remember about Sawmills is I was in London and the band were down there. I would get phone calls which were expressing this stress that was going on down there, probably from each different member of the band, saying this is really difficult for one reason or another. I definitely remember Johnny calling up and being very traumatized by the struggle that he was going through to try and be brilliant.
I remember one of the times when he came back and we were sitting in the room and he was showing me some stuff on the guitar. We were going through chord progressions and stuff. And I really wanted to ask him about, why? Why are you going to potentially mash up the whole recording thing because they're taking heroin and that? And then when we were going through the chords and stuff like that, I just thought to myself, I'm not going to say anything. Because I felt like I was in a place where I could have said something. And I thought to myself, because he was so, the vision was so clear with the music, everything else was just scattered. Everything else was just a madness. It was like, he was just high intensity, like super high. Björn and Carl were doing their own thing, trying to get through it. Christian was on his own loner thing. And Johnny, I think, like you say, he found some solace in taking heroin. And I remember saying to Johnny, I'm not getting paid enough for this shit. Like, really and truly, I need money for being a counsellor at this, at that. And we laugh and stuff like that. But the reason why I never went in on him with the heroin thing was because as soon as we hit record, he was on it. I remember Johnny going AWOL for a few days. Literally, everyone was just sending out search parties and we didn't know what had happened.
So I go into the hotel, so well, Johnny, they said, oh, he checked out this morning. Apparently he's gone to see his sick uncle in Plymouth. So I thought, what do we do now? So first thing I did was, when we were doing stuff in London, I met his girlfriend, I got her number. So I rang her. And I said, Jenny, I do where Johnny's uncle is. She said, oh, he's here. Do you want to talk to him?
This was the deal. This is why I went back to, why I went to Plymouth. I lied to everyone and said I went to Plymouth to go and see my grandfather, right? But he'd already recorded pretty much everything. And then I had to do the vocals, right? And what I was working on was the exact right frame of mind to get the vocal, because I did try a couple of times. And that was why I said to the guys, look, I prefer if no one else is in the studio.
It's almost like he's got his own special ways to get into his own brain. And it's like, I don't know, but I know this is I know what I want to do, what I want to achieve at the end of it. And then he's got this very strange way of kind of nudging his brain into somewhere where he can do that.
The problem was I'd started on this thing of getting back on the heroin, so I couldn't stop doing it. And I just kind of knew that as soon as I got the cocktail right, I'd be able to sing the whole record in one. So anyway, trial and error. By about the fourth day, I'll give you the secret. This was the cocktail. Wake up, do a small amount of heroin, just enough to keep everything functioning. Smoke a joint, get a little bit wide out, start on the coffees, but while you've got onto about coffee 2, drink half a can and then carry on the coffees. But I'm saying 4, 5, 6, 7 instant coffees, right? I don't know if anyone drinks instant coffee anymore, but that was all we had back then, right? I remember sitting there with the coffee in one hand and the can in the other. I said to John, I'm ready. And he was like, whoa, okay. So everything stops. And I went down the other end and you can hear it. Like, I think the first one I did was Get It and Go. And you can hear it. Just I challenge anyone, listen to that delivery. You can't do that straight. You just can't do that straight. And when I try and sing it live, like, I'm just copying what I did then. I mean, I've learned it, right, over the years, but it doesn't pop like that, you know? We did it. 3 takes for each song. Comp them up, and well, the record is sung. I'm never doing that again.
There was nothing he did that I thought was a reckless move. I think everything he did was calculated. He had a vision and a plan from the beginning. And in the studio, he was a very, very different person. You know, just totally focused. Yet you go out for a beer with him, and he was the most entertaining, lovely bloke you could ever go out for a beer with. It was just fucking such warm, friendly. Vibes everywhere.
Johnny's cool. Just don't put him in the damn circus. That's what I'm saying sometimes. If you put him in the circus, there might be times where he might act up and he might misunderstand himself, because the one thing I always rated about him is that he had knowledge of himself. So only when he comes off of that, I might be like, yo, Johnny, wagwan. And he'll know what I mean when I say wagwan. I don't even need to say anything more, because he knows I know him just like on a spirit and on a man level. And then the rest of everyone else, it don't matter what they say. He was a blessing on many people's lives, and is still continually, when people go back to the music and then maybe the music that he makes in the future. So who cares if he's misunderstood? Like, he did a lot.
I never thought the album was going to kill me or anything, but if it hadn't worked out, then I think it would have killed music for me.